October is well underway and you're probably starting to see some of those fall colors beautiful and vibrant this year as we're already transitioning into peak fall color season. So in this week's Climate Friday newsletter, I thought it would be relevant to talk about focusing on those fall colors. You can subscribe to Climate Friday at WTOL.com/email for the very latest. And in this week's topic, we are going to break down the impacts of climate change on the fall colors and also what you can expect this year as far as when that transition occurs and when we reach the peak of our fall foliage. Here's where we stand right now. If you live in Northwest Ohio or southeastern Michigan, you've likely already seen some of those beautiful colors on the leaves. The further south you live, the later that transition happens, but across Michigan, already starting to see some vibrant fall colors. This orange color across Northwest Ohio, that shows you partial fall colors. In other words, we're roughly 50-50, still seeing a lot of green on the trees, but that transition happening before you know it. Across central Michigan, that red color indicates near peak conditions. Lansing on to the north, and in the UP and upper Michigan, boy, they've got some vivid fall colors already to look forward to this year. Across the Ohio River Valley, still a little bit on the patchy side, mainly green to the south of Toledo from Columbus towards Cincinnati, as the warmer temperatures cause a slower change. What about across the country? Again, the further north you live, the sooner the fall colors reach their peak and brightness. Looking in northern Michigan, up into the northern plains, parts of northern Minnesota and Wisconsin enjoying the peak of the fall foliage. Zooming in on a few of those areas from Green Bay over towards Minneapolis, early October is when they reach the peak. From Chicago through South Bend and Toledo, we reach our peak in the middle of October. You'll see the time frame on the side of your screen. So mid-October through late October, that is when we get the best fall colors of the season. Now you may remember last year that was a little different than most years. Even though we should hit our peak in mid-October, last year was the latest change in fall colors on record. In fact, at this point last year, we still had all green on the trees. Weather did play a role in that late change, and it took until November for us to see those full fall colors. So what are the weather ingredients that contribute to the change in the fall colors? Mild days are good for those fall colors. With sunny skies and dry weather, that is very conducive to a vivid fall season. We've gotten exactly that this last week. We've had days in the 70s and we've had sunny and dry days. Now the cool nights are also good because it causes the cessation of the chlorophyll production. We'll talk a little more about chlorophyll in just a second. You don't want it too cold, don't want it to be below freezing, but temperatures overnight in the 40s are perfect for seeing that gradual transition to fall colors. Let's talk about a few of the weather ingredients that are either good, thumbs up, or bad, thumbs down for those changes in fall colors. Warm days are generally good. However, if it's a little too warm, that can cause a later change. That is what we saw last year. We had such a warm and humid fall with temperatures in the 80s, even pushing 90 degrees, that it caused such a late transition. Now, we do like those cooler nights, but cold is generally a thumbs down, and a hard freeze, that can kill the leaves on the trees. When you do get a hard freeze early in the season, what it does is it can kill those leaves on the trees before they've had the chance to turn over. If those green leaves are not going to change over, well, that cold weather, not good for the fall colors. What about rainy weather? That's generally a thumbs down, and too much rain can diminish those vivid colors. Of course, you do need a little bit of rain, but if you think back on this weather pattern we've been in the last 2 weeks, we've gotten lots of sunshine, endless sunshine, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. We get a thumbs up from dry conditions. Sunny days are good for the fall foliage. So what effects are climate change playing? We're going to talk about that in a second, but those cooler nights are one of the key ingredients to that fall color change. We like those cool temperatures in the 40s as we've gotten these last few weeks. However, the freezing lows, those are a little bit too cold and can cause the leaves to die before they've changed over. I mentioned chlorophyll earlier. That is a pigment in the leaves that causes that green color. That's what you see in the springtime and the summer as well. And chlorophyll production tends to slow down on the cooler nights. In other words, when you see less of the green pigment, you see more of the oranges, the reds, and all of those other vivid and beautiful colors. Now, each color in the leaves is a different pigment, and these are all produced year-round. So even in the summertime, there is still some orange, yellow, and red in those leaves. It's just masked by the green chlorophyll. Flavanols, that is the name of the pigment that produces our yellow colors on the leaves. Beta-carotene is responsible for the oranges, and that may sound familiar and sound a lot like the word carrot, and indeed it is. Beta-carotene Beta-carotene is the same pigment that produces that orange color in certain food items like sweet potatoes and also in carrots. And anthocyanins, those are the purples that are beautiful and typical of the later season. Here's the role that climate change plays on our fall colors. In general, the changeover with those fall colors is happening later and later. Climate change is delaying the onset of fall colors. Case in point, last year. That was the record latest transition we have ever had. The reason for that, well, as temperatures are warming up, we're getting less and less of those cool, crisp nights. When you don't have the cool nights, the chlorophyll production continues well into the fall, and that means that the leaves stay green. What happened last year is we had such a mild fall, and climate change was partly to blame for that. Of course, weather and climate are very different, and climate change is only one ingredient that impacts these fall colors. Last year, we had such a mild fall, and without those cooler nights, we had a delayed onset of those fall colors. Here is another impact of climate change, the peak of fall foliage. In other words, when we see those most vivid and vibrant colors, that's turning a little bit shorter. We're turning back the clock as far as how long we get to enjoy the peak of fall colors. The shortened peak of fall foliage is something you'll likely notice in the coming years and decades. In other words, it's going to be a little more condensed. In the past, we saw several weeks of vibrant and beautiful fall colors. Now we are seeing less and less in terms of the peak of fall foliage. Once again, here is where we stand this year. We are still fairly early on. We're still about 2 weeks away from the peak of fall colors. Now, if you live in southeastern Michigan, you're going to see the transition a little bit sooner because temperatures do tend to be cooler in Hillsdale and Lenawee counties. And if you live south of Toledo, say Findlay or Upper Sandusky, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for the peak of fall colors. We are going to be near that peak after this cool weekend. And in fact, some of those chilly overnight lows are actually going to be conducive to those fall colors coming to fruition. In this week's Climate Friday, we talked about a focus on the fall colors, what causes the color change, the pigments responsible for the different colors, and also how climate change may play a role. And we've got more information on WTOL 11, and you can tune in for next week's edition of Climate Friday. Head to WTOL.com/email to subscribe to the Climate Friday newsletter.